I don't think it's past a price point where it is starting to look unaffordable.
The investors are now starting to ask, what's next? What's the next Perth?
Exactly that mentality is why wouldn't you? Right? Like there's no disadvantage.
I've actually got my personal phone here. I don't normally have it. But Jason, pay attention.
Oh, sorry.
But my missus is pregnant.
Yeah.
And we're about to have a baby. So if it rings,
Do you want me to answer?
if it rings, you guys are
Yeah.
just talking to yourselves.
Yeah.
But I feel like you don't really need me in this episode. Today we're talking about the Perth property market. I never bought in Perth. I don't know if you bought in
Neither
Perth
have
before. This guy, I think, may have bought in Perth a few times. I'm Michael Carboni. You can call me Carbs. And this is Property Now. So we're just having mad convos with our friends about property.
100%.
As always happens, just, we put a mic in front of ourselves this time around.
Thanks,
but
Carbs.
as always, we are friends now.
We are.
We'll introduce you in a second. But firstly, the sexiest voice in podcasting,
Thank you very much, Cubs. I'm
the
back.
He-Man. That sounds even sexier today. How you been, Jace?
Very well, very well. Looking forward to this one. I think this is going to be a cracker.
And you bought a friend with you, Alex Minter, Estute Properties.
Estute
Property Network.
Yeah.
What's the network part about?
It's a network, so...
I got that.
You
I got that from
Did
the
you
name.
Get it? Did you?
But,
Okay. If I've got to break it down for you,
Yeah.
so Estute is, having the ability to, identify a situation and turn it to one's advantage, right? So working for the buyer. Property, that's obviously the product that we source, and network is a network of businesses and individuals and people in that space that we collaborate with.
Thank you for dumbing it down for the me's of the world. That's fantastic. But you're the expert. So today we're talking Perth property market. As I say, we haven't bought in Perth before.
No.
So we're not going to talk to these people about the Perth market. We know nothing
Should
about
I leave now?
Can I, mate, you know what? Let's just leave Alex to his own devices.
Is this the Alex Estute Property Network show?
It's
Thanks for joining us today, boys.
Property Now brought to you by Composite, brought to you by Estute Property Network. No, but welcome, man.
Thank you.
How is the Perth market? No, that's a very broad question.
It is a very broad
But-
question, yeah.
But well, actually, let's start. Let's talk about Perth. How is Perth going at the moment? Obviously, things have changed a lot in the last few years over there. I remember a time when Perth was booming, maybe a decade or so ago. It was like the mining town boom. And then all of a sudden, the miners left and Perth died in a big way. And it was always sort of lagging behind the big markets.
Yeah.
But more recently, Perth's picked up. They've gone from averages of, say, 400K for a house and land over there to maybe your 650s these days.
Yeah.
How's Perth
Very
going?
quickly.
Very quickly.
Mm.
How's it going now?
Such a hot topic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's anybody who talks about property on a national scale, Perth is always part of the conversation, and part of that conversation as well is you always hear Perth and mining. Historically, I guess to a degree, many think it probably has had an unhealthy reliance on that mining sector.
Yeah.
Right, but I think there's other industries there, which is still, I think that's its major industry.
Yeah.
But there's other industries there that are supporting it and backing it up as well currently. Perth, where it's located, if you start to think about that, it's the most remote city on the planet.
Yeah.
Right.
I've heard that
It's
stat
pretty-
too. Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think.
Crazy when you think about that,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the closest capital city is Adelaide to Perth, so it's the most remote capital city there. 200 or so sunny days a year. It's a great place to live.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, if you can swim from sharks as
Yeah,
well.
yep. Getting across to rock nests. So, look, from a growth point of view and investment point of view, it's certainly shot the lights out over the last couple of years, right? And I think many questions now for many property professionals and economists are, how much legs does it have left, right? So yeah, it's an interesting topic and an interesting space.
So you're buying a fair bit in Perth, or is it what's your sort of percentage? Because you buy nationally, right?
Yeah. Our percentage, we're probably more heavily buying on the East Coast.
Yep.
We do buy in Perth. However, for us, I guess, it does come down to diversification for buyers who are pretty much loaded up on the East Coast and need that diversification.
Yep.
It all comes down to the individual strategy as well. So most of the time, we may start on the East Coast in regards to sourcing and then open up the West Coast if we need to.
Yep.
And it's not saying that we shouldn't be starting there, but a lot of the buyers that we service and work with, they're finding what they need and the returns and the fundamentals on the East Coast currently.
So for your buyers, or most of your
Mm.
buyers, you're saying they're probably more established investors. They've got
Yeah.
a couple of properties up their sleeve, and it's like, okay, let's have a look at a
Yeah.
different market. Just to
Yeah,
diversify
exactly right.
things.
It is a mix. We probably deal and work with more established investors these days.
Yeah.
We do see the beginner investor. We do see the well-seasoned investor, and again, that just comes down to understanding, where they're at in their portfolio journey, what the strategies are behind what they're trying to capture and generate. Because at the end of the day, I mean, there's markets within markets, and you probably hear that. It's so cliche, and there's certain areas that you probably want to focus on at certain times. But again, for us, there's no bias. There's no like we have to buy in Perth or we have to buy in Queensland or we have to buy in New South Wales. At the end of the day, it does come down to the individual's strategy and price point and what we need to capture.
Price point's a good one, because I don't know about you, Jace, but I hear a lot of, especially first home buyers, and a lot of first home buyers that are from Sydney these days, they're not actually owner-occupier first homes. They're not moving into that first home.
Yeah.
So they might be rent-vesting. They might be lucky enough to still be able to live at home with their parents. They can't afford Sydney, so they start to look at maybe rural New South Wales. They start to look at places like Adelaide. They start to look at places like Perth. Do you think that this investor demand, because I even know now, I like living in Sydney, I hear 650k average house and land in Perth.
Yeah.
It sounds bloody amazing.
Yep.
So, like, from an investor perspective, is it these sorts of investors that have driven the market in the last, say, year and a half?
Well, yeah, I think it's contributed significantly to the growth in that region. I mean, it's really been, to a degree, driven by that affordability, right? And I think after that COVID push and the boom in property, we all had the confidence to go and start investing again, right? And for those who had sub 500,000, they couldn't buy in Sydney, and they couldn't buy in certain areas on the East Coast. So, Perth was a very attractive option, and it still is from an affordability point of view. Right, but it still has its challenges today, right? So, its median price point is certainly pushing up.
Yep.
Right. It's buying sub 500 there is difficult, right? You're starting to compromise on certain areas and certain things that you probably want to make sure is there for an investment. So again, it just opens up the question. Is Perth the right time to buy now? It could be, but it all comes down to individual circumstances.
Yeah, very interesting. So I got a broad question here. Is it the right time to buy in Perth? You're saying it's an individual.
It certainly is.
Can we put a broad brush on it? Like, is it kind of too late? Like, because we've seen such growth. Is there going to be that sort of growth in the next 18, 24 months? Are there pockets where there's still opportunities? I know I'm looking at some figures, right? So median house price in Perth is actually 680. The median rent is 650 per week, right? Median apartment price in Perth is 450. So it's still sub that $500,000.
Yeah.
And the median rent for that is 600 per week. So the yields on an apartment looking stronger as well. Where are the opportunities?
Well, across the board, you mentioned apartments here. Excuse me. There's been for the last 10, 15 years, there's been a huge disparity on apartment prices versus house prices, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen house prices across the board on a national scale do very well, right? Obviously, some cities have come back, but there's always been that large gap. And particularly areas on the East Coast, we've seen an apartment product and price point catch right up to, or you come very close to closing that gap on houses and apartments, right? Now, if you're looking at Perth, look, I still think detached housing is probably where you want to be in that space. I don't think it's past a price point where it is starting to look unaffordable and you have to start exploring attached housing, i.e. apartments, townhouse style product.
Yep.
But to answer your question broadly, I still think it has legs. However, you just have to be very strategic and cautious, or cautiously optimistic is probably what I should, how I should explain that.
Yep. Would you be looking at Perth at the moment, He-Man?
Oh, look, really depends, right? Because borrowing capacity is always a challenge. For me, it's more around debt reduction now.
Yeah.
Perhaps in the future. But if I was to buy another investment property, I'd definitely look at interstate, because there's also the issues with land tax and so forth. And I can see, why people or investors would look at diversifying into different states because of the price points as well. You know, for 650,000, if you buy something in Sydney or even, you know, in Melbourne, you can't get a house.
The diversification word has come up a few times. So for anyone at home that may be wanting to look into investing in property or hasn't before, what is diversification? Why is it important? I'll throw it out to either of you guys.
Yeah, well, Jason mentioned one there is land tax as well. So each state has a different land tax threshold. And when you exceed that threshold, then you enter land tax territory.
Yep.
So if you've loaded up in New South Wales or Queensland or any other state, you may want to then go, okay, well, I'm diversifying into the WA market, you know, to get around land tax. And also, you know, you're not just buying property to get around land tax, right? It still has to meet the requirements of what you're trying to do. But yeah, from a growth point of view, I still, you know, if we look at how Perth has performed over the last couple of years, you know, it's only been done really well for the last 3 years, right?
Yep.
Historically, it normally has a run of sort of circa 6 to 10 years.
Okay.
Right.
So based on that, it could still have a bit of runway.
It could still, and nobody has a crystal ball, right?
wish we
We've
did.
probably got to put that disclaimer on there, big asterisk, no crystal ball.
Not financial advice.
No, not financial. But the growth has been very aggressive over the last 3 years,
Yep.
right? So the questions I'm sort of asking in that space is, you know, again, you know, looking at historic data, it still suggests that there's legs there.
Yep.
But is that time frame going to be more condensed due to the aggressive growth that it's had?
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. The feeling I get is that the investors have, like Perth's been an investor darling for the last 12 to 18 months. That has driven up prices dramatically. What it means is the owner-occupiers, the people living in Perth, it's starting to fall away from them. So while it looks cheap for us, because we're here in Sydney going, oh wow, 650, 680, that's fantastic. For them, it's like, hold on a second, I could buy this for 450 a couple of years ago. What's going on? So, but I feel like because there's been this dramatic growth, the investors are now starting to ask, what's next? What's the next Perth? So they're starting to pull out of Perth, and then maybe the owner-occupiers can come back to the party. Things can keep growing nicely, but it might be more of a sort of slow pace rather than what we've seen.
Investor activities, I think, it's leading the charge over there.
Yeah.
It's
Which is shit for the owner-occupiers. They must think, like, what are you doing to our market here? Like, it was affordable.
You know, there's always a question of, is that a bubble?
Yeah.
Right? You know, is he, and I don't think, you know, I think it's at 30% or thereabouts at the moment. I don't think it's at a level where it should start to raise concern.
Yep.
Because remember, that activity's coming off a really low base
Yep.
as well over the last, let's call it 10 years. There hasn't been much activity in Perth. I mean, you ask any investor or investment group, they probably weren't even, Perth was never on the radar for the last 8 years, right? So investment activity has been really, really slow, and it's just ramped right up over the last couple of years. But I don't think it's at levels yet where it does raise concern to be like, whoa, this is like a pure investment market.
Yeah.
I think when you start to get to that 40s and maybe 50%, that's a different story.
It's almost as if after that original mining boom, everyone stopped talking about Perth. They weren't talking. Perth was not a good idea in anyone's book. And then all of a sudden it was like, hold on, Sydney's 1.2 million.
Yep.
Brisbane's getting to 1 million. Melbourne, even Adelaide is going like.
Yeah.
And Perth was sort of just there as like an untouched sort of area because of what happened with that mining boom. And they've gone, hold on a second, it needed to catch up.
Yeah.
This is the catch up that sort of needed to happen over there.
Yeah.
So it does make a lot of sense, but the hesitation also makes a little bit of sense as well.
Yep.
Yeah, but I also think there's the change, or another factor is the rise of the buyer's agents as well.
Yeah.
So like what Alex was talking about, say 18 years ago, most people didn't know what a buyer's agent was. And you probably couldn't find one at that time.
I think there was like 3.
Yeah, right. So, you know, now all I see on my Facebook feed are just buyer's agents, you know, people becoming buyer's agents or courses advertising how to become a buyer's agent. Right?
It's good. It has its pros and cons.
I was being a bit sarcastic because all of a sudden everyone's a buyer's agent.
Right. So, you know, with the growth of buyer's agents, a lot of people are now more willing to buy interstate. Because prior to that, if you didn't have a buyer's agent, you wouldn't even consider buying interstate unless you have family living there, you're going to Perth. No one would think about traveling to Perth for 2 weeks to find an investment property.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where I think a lot of people bought properties near where they lived. Because the idea of buying interstate was so foreign. Like, who would do that?
Well, the level of research you need. Like, you can have an understanding of how markets work and, you know, when's a good time to buy, etc. You can have that understanding generally, but to actually look at actual markets and like
for sure.
actual suburb, why is this suburb better than that suburb?
Yeah.
Why is this street in that suburb
Yeah.
better than this street in the same suburb?
Yeah.
It helps having a buyer's agent who's doing
Yeah,
that sort of thing
absolutely.
every day.
And that's the microeconomics that you know the average Joe Blow probably wouldn't understand how to analyze. Right?
What's a buyer's agent cost someone?
It varies,
Yeah.
right? And you know, on the topic of buyer's agents, I mean, it's a rapidly evolving space.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the last stats that I've seen, I think there's about out of 46,000 registered real estate businesses, there's about 150,000 real estate agents,
Okay,
right? So
yeah.
selling agents.
Yeah.
Right? But out of those 46,000 registered businesses, there's only circa about 4,000 buyer's agents.
Okay.
Right? So it's still very infant. Now, the challenges in this space is, you know, realistically, it's not a degree. It's not a long, lengthy study course. I mean, yes, there's licensing and stuff that you have to go through
Yep.
as a real estate, and they are starting to regulate that a bit better and
Yeah.
tighten it up, which is what this industry needs, right? But the challenge is, I'm very supportive of this space, and I believe it needs to grow because I think the representation of buyers needs to grow more than what it is, right? But the challenge now is, well, there's all these new buyers agents coming to market with minimal to even no experience, right? And
Yeah.
they've got a certificate, they've got a registered business, and now that they're expecting people to pay them to go and find a property with possibly, you know, not much experience themselves, right?
Yep.
They may not even own a property.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but however, on the other hand, you want to support those guys. They have to they have to grow. They have
Gotta
to
start,
understand, you
yeah.
know, the industry. They've got to learn, right? So how much does a buyer's agent cost? Again, it does vary on experience as well. So I've heard of buyer's agents charging $1,000, right? Again, very minimal experience, and that's probably the value that they're adding to those buyers.
Yep.
And then there's buyer's agents that charge percentage of the purchase price, right? So you can be in the tens and hundreds of thousands depending on what sort of, you know, properties you're sourcing.
Yeah.
But the general rule of thumb, you're probably around that sort of $10,000 to $20,000 mark.
Yeah, and the rule as a buyer, I guess, is you want to make sure that if you're investing, for example, that the value that the agent adds, you're going to be
Yeah.
able to get that value on the
Absolutely,
other side.
yeah.
So that's what that's what your research needs to look into.
Absolutely.
It's very interesting. So about 10% of the real estate agent market are buyers agents. So if
Yeah.
you're looking at 400,000 agents,
Yeah.
but like 4,000 of those are sorry.
So there's about so 46,000
46,000 registered businesses.
but there's about 150,000 thereabouts
Yeah.
agents. Yeah.
It's crazy to me because like the seller has so much help.
Yeah.
You know, we've spoken about this on the podcast before, right? As a buyer, you walk in, the agent's there.
Yeah.
You don't want to give him your secrets or her.
Yeah.
Like you feel attacked. Like
Yeah, that's right.
they're calling you
That's
on Monday.
right.
They're emailing. You're on their mailing list all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
as a buyer, how often? Like, you know, the first time I came across a buyer's agent, a mate of mine was using a buyer's agent to help him bid at an auction.
Sure.
Because he was nervous to bid at an auction.
Yep.
So like, let's get someone to do that for you
Yep.
that has experience doing
Well,
that
a
every
good
day.
buyer's agent should know when to stop. Right?
Exactly.
And stop your mate from spending more than what the property's worth or what he can afford.
It reminds me a lot of you guys, like mortgage brokers. So I was listening to Mark Boris, one of his, I don't know, might have been TikTok or Instagram
Yeah.
or one of his podcasts.
Yeah, right.
It was talking about back in the day when mortgage
Yeah.
brokers used to charge like exorbitant fees to
Yeah.
buyers
For the service.
for the service,
Yeah,
fee for
that's
service,
right.
which makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense. Like
that's
you
right.
spend a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's not that easy. I see what you do every day. It's not that easy.
And probably back then, like the clients going to the mortgage brokers probably had a very difficult situation.
Yeah.
They obviously couldn't get their loan through the major banks.
Yes.
And otherwise, nobody would have thought of going to a
So
mortgage
to have
broker.
to pay, you
Yeah.
had to be, because you could just go to your bank
Correct.
branch,
Right.
speak to the loan
Yeah, yeah.
manager,
Yeah.
and they were your buddy. and
Even
you're
if
like-
it was free,
Yeah.
people wouldn't think of going to mortgage brokers like 15, 20 years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
What's a mortgage broker?
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
But
Like,
but then it became a free service for the buyer, right?
That's right.
And that was the big turning point. So now, like, everyone uses a mortgage broker.
correct.
Right?
correct.
What's a
75%.
75%.
That's,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
amazing.
I don't know why you wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
I love the. No, I don't love the banks, but you know, I love like. Why would you go to a bank when you go?
Well,
to a
that's
broker?
exactly right. You know, that's why the results show 75% of people are using mortgage brokers.
Yeah.
Exactly that mentality is why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
right? Like there's no disadvantage
Yeah.
because the mortgage brokers don't own the products. They don't set the interest rate. They don't set your fees from the bank.
Yeah.
Right? They're literally there to provide that service, advice, comparison for you. Right? So even if you had you're inclined to go with CBA because you've always banked with them and so forth, and you like the way it's set up,
Yeah.
you could still get a CBA loan through a mortgage broker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, but at least you know how it stacks up against the other options.
Exactly.
And you're making a conscious and informed decision. Okay, it's a little bit more expensive, but you know what? I'm happy to pay for that little bit extra so I can use NetBank. I've got all my banking tidy. That's the cost of convenience.
Exactly.
Versus not knowing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
So we've gone from a world where to use a mortgage broker, you needed to like not be able to get a loan elsewhere.
That's right.
Be very astute, like investor, or
Yeah.
whatever, like the minimum, like of people.
Yeah.
Whereas now everyone, like
That's right.
my parents, they'd
Yeah.
introduce me to a broker.
Yeah.
I use you.
Yeah.
I introduce my friends to you.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I feel like buyers agents are waiting to have that moment. So
Oh, look, 100%.
yeah.
Yeah, because we already see that. Like a lot of our customers who are especially first-time investors, especially if their budget doesn't allow them to purchase something decent. For example, on the eastern seaboard, they're looking at Perth, they're looking at Adelaide. They are typically using a buyer's agent, and we will recommend that they use a buyer's agent because we see clearly the customers that we do pre-approvals for who don't use a buyer's agent versus the one that uses a buyer's agent. We've got a client that we've done a pre-approval for about 12 months ago. Don't want to use a buyer's agent. No, we've told them we don't have any vested interest in recommending whatever buyer's agent. We just tell people about the idea of a buyer's agent and what they do. You can go find your own buyer's agent.
Yeah.
Right. And clearly they don't want to spend the money for a buyer's agent for whatever reason. They don't see the value, so they think they can do it themselves. But it's now been 12 months. So if you think about it,
They've lost that.
correct.
12 months
opportunity
of
The
cost.
market's been going. It's been growing.
Well, especially if let's go back to Perth as an opportunity.
That's right.
They would have lost
Correct.
$100,000-$200,000
Correct.
by
Correct.
not making that decision to spend
Easily.
$15K.
That's right. Where our clients who are pre-approved using a buyer's agent
Yeah.
usually purchase within 90 days.
We're going a little bit off topic,
Yeah.
but I find this very interesting. So, buyers agents at the moment, are you finding that it's mostly investors that use you guys? Are there any owner ops that are?
My company just deals with investors.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that's our niche, and that's the avenue that we've chosen to pursue. For us and me, particularly, we're about the numbers.
Yeah.
There are owner-occupied buyers agents, and there's buyers agents that specialise in specific areas, which is probably good to understand. Not all buyers agents are the same.
Yeah, unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah,
if you
so
can.
there's owner-occupied buyers agents, right? And they may just work in a certain territory, a few suburbs, a few streets even. They've got those networks, those relationships with agents, and they work for the owner-occupiers, right? So they're walking through 20 doors a week, right? I'm not committing to buyers agents walking through 20 doors a week, right? But there's some that may do that, right?
Yep.
So then there's investment specialists, which is the category that we fall into, and borderless as well. So we don't just, again, there's no bias on any area or region. We're licensed in multiple states, so we can buy anywhere depending on what the numbers are that we're looking for.
Yep.
Right. So there's commercial specialists as well.
Yep.
Right. So a residential buyer's agent doesn't necessarily have the networks or the understanding on how to buy commercial.
Yep.
Right. So there's guys that facilitate that. That's in a nutshell around how they operate and who does what.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I do see a day in 10, 15 years where just everyone goes to a buyer's agent in the same way that everyone now uses mortgage
Well,
brokers.
you look at the US.
Yeah.
It's very. I've worked with now many migrants from the US, and they're perplexed that not every buyer doesn't use a buyer's agent. They're like, I can't believe you guys don't have a buyer's agent working. Like
Mad accent.
Is that a good accent?
Yeah, mad. Is that to all our American listeners? That was American. From an Aussie perspective. No, but it's true. So America are really probably leading the way in that regard.
They are, yeah.
And we always tend to follow whatever the trend they have, right?
do,
So
don't we?
everything they do over there is like a 5-year, 10-year lag,
Yeah.
and we'll end up doing it here. So if they're doing some new marketing there, we'll end up doing it here. It's always like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that makes perfect sense.
Even talking interest rates, all of a sudden America sneezes and we're
Yeah.
like, ooh,
Yeah, 100%.
what's going to happen
Yeah,
next?
absolutely.
Like, it's crazy.
And someone just needs to try and assassinate Peter Dutton.
That'll be the next one. We don't condone, we're not condoning assassinations on this show.
certainly not.
Oh my goodness. Let's take it back to Perth, which is what
Sure.
we. But I love.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated. Maybe we bring you back for a bigger
Yeah.
buyer's agent piece at some stage because it is fascinating, and
It
I
is,
want to.
yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of buyers out there. A lot of people listening to this are first home
Mm.
buyers or aspiring first home buyers.
Yeah.
They're here because they don't think they can buy.
Yep.
Point. But they've heard about Composite, they've heard about us, Composite Street, Property Now, whatever, and they think all of a sudden, hey, actually, maybe there is an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think that opportunity could be in rent vesting or home, like free vesting, like living at home.
1000%,
Are you seeing more and more of that these days?
We've seen more rent investors over the last 2 years than we've historically seen
Yeah,
over the last 8 years.
yeah,
And as Jason mentioned before, I think many first home buyers and just buyers in general realise they may be tapped out of the East Coasts and particularly Sydney
Yeah.
markets.
yeah,
And I think the realisation now is, well, I can see the market is moving, and not just in Sydney, it's moving nationally. So I've got my 60k, 80k deposit. It's not going to get me into this market, but I've got to put it somewhere.
yeah,
And a good buyer's agent will be able to identify a market that's going to grow for them to then leverage that equity
yeah,
to buy an owner-occupier or keep investing.
yeah,
Right? And we see that all the time. We had an awesome case study recently, which, like, the email I got from the broker just made me go, I'm so glad I'm doing what we're doing.
yeah.
It was
That's the best.
it was
What
it was
a testimonial.
awesome. Yeah, it was. Yeah. So very quickly, a family living in the Illawarra, blue chip suburb on the beach, couldn't afford it.
Go the
right?
Dragons.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And anyway, so we bought something for 590,000.
Yep.
Right. Valued a year later for 750. Their borrowing capacity now was 1.15 mil.
Mad.
Right. So it's just like, I'm so glad we did that for you.
Yeah.
And it's just one.
And
one
they're going to
example.
come back as well. They repeat.
Well, they
yeah.
actually came back, and
Yeah.
we just settled their second property.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Do you have any let's bring it back to Perth. Let's go back full circle. Any Perth or Western
Yeah,
Australian case studies you can share with
Yeah,
us?
it's similar. It's just healthy growth
Yeah.
over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Right. So, I'm not seeing buyers that we've worked with make 120% returns or anything like that, right? It's still healthy growth. There's still equity to tap into if you bought over the last couple of years there. Again, it's not, for the purchases we've made, we haven't certainly, not claiming we've shot the lights out, but it's done what it's need to do for those individuals.
Do people come to you and say, "Yep, I want to buy in this area, help me," or do they say, "Hey, this is my situation.
Yeah.
Where should I buy?"
Good question. They do. And if they have a specific suburb that they want and they're not going to compromise, we're probably not the people to help them,
Yep.
right? Because we have to look at it from a holistic point of view and a full overview, right? So understanding, okay, well, what is it that you're trying to capture here? And that suburb that they're looking at may be achieving those figures, right?
Yep.
But if they're not, we then have to say, well, you're trying to capture this. There's another area over here that's possibly going to do that or better.
Yeah.
Right. And then so, you know what I mean? So that's how we view it.
Yeah.
But we do have people saying, yeah, it has to be this area. But we take them through an education piece as well. Again, there's no bias for us. We're not trying to take them out of the market that they're looking in. It's just basically saying, okay, well, what are you trying to capture? Let's see if that market is going to do what you anticipate it to do to capture what you're trying to capture.
Yeah, great. That's awesome, man. Okay, Perth, 2025. Crystal ball time.
Crystal ball time, yeah.
What's it look like? Yeah. For anyone watching at home.
Again, I don't see the bottom falling out. I don't see any major downturn again. I think the growth has been so small over the last couple. When I say small, the time frame is
period,
the period is very small. However, we have seen that aggressive growth. I think again, cautiously optimistic. We've gone past the point of buying absolutely anything and making money overnight, right? Again, there's markets within markets. If you draw a circle around Perth and keep within a comfortable commute to a CBD, public transport, hospitals, schools, I don't think you can go wrong with that type of...
My gut tells me the investors are starting to pull away. So
Yep.
Perth was hot. We've been hearing about it. Every podcast, every TikTok, everything. Perth. But that's starting to plateau a little bit. We're not hearing it as much.
Yep.
So what's the next Perth?
Yeah, next Perth. Jeez, good question. Well, if you think about it, again, investors and more so the beginner investors follow affordability.
Yep.
Right. So you got to go, okay, where's the next market, or what markets are, let's call it sub 500 or 500,000,
Yep.
that are backed up by sound fundamentals, that are backed up by employment, not just relying on one industry, that have infrastructure,
Yep.
that have population growth, right? So you've got to start to look at those markets, and I see majority of those on the East Coast,
Yep.
compared to the West. I think the only thing that can maybe influence Perth in a negative direction is a black swan event.
Yep.
That's my take.
Yep.
But I think if you're buying there in the next year or so, just be strategic.
Yep.
Don't just go and buy anything, because I don't think it's going to shoot the lights out like it's done over the last 3 years. It'll still grow healthily, but yeah.
What's on the East Coast for sub half a mil? Are we talking rural sort of areas now?
Yeah,
or?
it's. I guess it does go into the regional markets. There's parts of Queensland, parts of New South Wales that you can explore. I mean, you look at Sydney, and you look at Newcastle's now up there.
Newcastle's right up there with Sydney.
You know what I mean?
Wollongong's basically Sydney pricing wise. Yeah,
exactly right. But once they were those markets, right? So you look at those markets around capitals, and again, I encourage investors to, because there's always been the preference for standalone, right? Houses over apartments and townhouses. But I encourage investors, if you do have that sub 500 price point, let's call it 400 to even 600,000, consider apartments in good areas.
Yep.
Right? Because again, we're seeing that aggressive growth in that space. So any apartment that's established at the moment that's going to market in a good city, in a good area, it's being bought very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Right. So again, you have to do the numbers, and you have to make sure that if there is a body corporate, which obviously majority of them have, and the rental yield is there, that it's feasible, right? But that market is doing very, very well.
How good.
Yeah.
We're going to bring you back for a broader convo, because this is a Perth conversation,
It is,
but it's been like 50% Perth. So like we've got to bring you back for that wider convo.
That's typically what always happens at Property Now.
That's what we do.
That's
We
right,
just talk about whatever we talk about.
Correct.
Don't believe the SEO titles. It's just, it ends up
100%.
being...
When you go to a barbecue, you don't take out an agenda.
Exactly.
You just have a conversation.
So what are we
have a
talking
chat.
about at the barbecue today?
I don't know.
Whatever.
Property Now with Perth.
Yeah, where'd the meat come from? That's fantastic. No, that's awesome, man. Do you want to tell us more about Estute Property? How can people find you if they wanted to engage in your services?
Yeah, look, my company does work alongside mortgage brokers, financial planners, accountants. It's really been designed to sit in that space and service those sort of businesses.
So you get the referrals.
Yeah. So
okay, so don't go to Alex directly. Go to Jason.
go to Jason.
He will refer you to Alex.
No financial benefit here, guys. Just to be clear, there's no conflict of interest.
Absolutely, yeah. So and we're very clear about that as well. So look, I mean, we have a website. I'm not too heavy on the socials, to be honest.
No worries.
astutepropertynetwork.com.au is where you can find us. Happy to have a general chat, and if there's any investors that need that guidance, happy to see what we can do.
Amazing. I reckon we'll be seeing you again, because this was a great chat. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us on Property Now.
Thanks Cubs.
Guys. Thank you.
The Property Now podcast offers opinions on Australian property news for informational and entertainment purposes only, and they are general in nature. It does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. It does not constitute professional advice. Always seek expert guidance before making any property-related decisions.